Hi, everyone. So, as mentioned, I'm Joanna, and I work at the University of Oregon, which is on the traditional land of the Siuslaw and Kalapuya tribes. And today, I'm going to be demoing several maps that we've made in collaboration with the Network Startup Resource Center. And I think we're probably good. Okay. So I would like to just take a minute to acknowledge, I'll thank them again at the end, a lot of the collaborators that have done a lot of the work, supporting the work behind this, Alethea and Jim Meacham in the lab, as well as many students and the staff over at the NSRC. So the InfoGraphics lab is a mapping and geospatial technology facility housed in UO's Department of Geography. We have a history of atlas making, 4 of which you see here. The last one, the second edition of the Atlas of Yellowstone, was recently published. There's a big poster and I believe actual physical hard copies over in the map gallery. So if you're here in person, you can check it out. If you're watching online, you should probably order it and buy it. Also you can see a selection of projects that I've presented on at NACIS, and as mentioned in my intro, they're really different each year. So for about 35 years, though, the lab across all of these projects has had a focus on using cartographic data and communication principles to support research, instruction, and public service activities. So this is a little bit about the NSRC. So they're another unit that's currently housed at UO. They work directly with Indigenous network engineers and operators around the world to develop and maintain internet infrastructure in their respective countries by producing technical information, engineering assistance, training, donating books, etc. The end goal for them is to make it easier for local scientists, lost my place, but basically their end goal is to help develop national and regional internet infrastructure for collaborative research, education, and international partnerships. And so if you have ever actually seen this map or a map like this is something produced by the NSRC. This is a map of all of the undersea and terrestrial cables that actually make the internet work. So how do those little bits of data get from somewhere in South America, crossing the sea, and then from there, following any of these cables to any other computer? The NSRC is involved in that. The process that we do with the NSRC is very similar to our process of working with other groups. So the primary activities are done by the NSRC team and their collaborators. And then when we work them, we start to develop stories. So this is done iteratively between both organizations. It includes brainstorming and a lot of whiteboard mock-ups. Wrong direction. We then get into a collaborative design process. So we have regular meetings with NSRC personnel. Depending on the project, this could be monthly, or if we're really pushing on a project, it might be weekly. The entire process is iterative because designing the new map can actually elicit new insights, which actually may go back and impact the design and the story. Additionally, many contributors means many mental pictures and perspectives. Sometimes it takes a few meetings, a few whiteboard sketches, or a few actual designs to get out what someone has in their mind onto paper and realize that when someone says they want something that emphasizes or shows off or is cool, something, they might be picturing something really different than you. After that, we have feedback both with the NSRC and then their actual users. In the end, our cartographic products then feel like they might be done, but of course they're not. There's always data updates. So this is a long-term collaboration. After they feel complete, we still often have data to update. So for this particular project, because we're doing a lot of online and web, we have actually planned ahead and tried to design the interactive maps to update automatically. Any print maps that we do with them are generally done manually, which does lead to map and then sometimes layout updates. Also data crunching by our wonderful students, some of which I see here. So an example of something we might do in print. This is one of the first posters, and it's a little washed out with the lighting in here, but I hope you know we would have great contrast when it was actually printed. This is one of the first maps I made with the NSRC, and it was a poster of their global development activities. The biggest step here was figuring out how to access their data and helping them clean up their geospatial information. We had some locations that were entered in very old, entered into a database that were maybe to the nearest degree. That doesn't really give you the correct location for where an event occurred. But we ended up doing things like categorizing their 30+ years of activities, aggregated into 2 categories on the main map and by decade below in smaller multiples, and created an infographic showing the number of people cumulatively trained each year by gender. And last I heard, this actually got hung up at one of the funders' walls at the NSF a couple years ago. They were really excited to see where their dollars were going. And because this is the software and programming one, I figured I should show you a little code, right? There's a little code even right behind a print map like this. So this is an example of an SQL query that I would use to pull in mappable and graphable summaries from the beautifully cleaned up NSRC activity database. So it has records for events, venues, participants, and more. The precision of the data, as I said, varied over time, with more detail collected recently. For us, this was actually really great, working with database professionals and a group, and having direct access to their database. This differs a lot from some of our other partners and projects who may be less technically literate and will send us data as just a shapefile, a database, or a geodatabase, or every now and then a PDF. Additionally, a lot more complicated queries that we had to get it mappable. They have all sorts of codes of data, which we then collapse down into the 2 categories for the map, joining many, many, many tables from venue and city, activity type, et cetera. So that was a lot of fun. But once we have this done, it means for data update, we just run this over and over again and we're set. All right, to something interactive. That's probably why you're really here. So our activities map had several student contributors as well as NSRC contributions. So they came to it with the goals. We have this poster. We love the poster. We want to do it online. We want this for live updates. So the question is, what can we answer? What can people answer when they interact with this map? So one of the questions was, what is the NSRC's global footprint over time? We had that big map. We had the small multiples. Can we do that in one place for people to explore? They have a ton of data in that database. How can we reveal that and let people actually see what's been going on in an engaging map interface rather than writing queries? Additionally, they wanted a simpler method for creating their own maps for reporting. And I'll show an example of that, as well as streamlining updates as new data comes in. So I'm going to start with just some kind of screenshotty things, but we'll try live. So far, it looks like it's been working. The Wi-Fi's been pretty good. Our workflow is, we wrote a script that pulls from the NSRC's database and makes daily dumps just onto a Google Drive CSV that we both have access to. We came up with an agreed upon schema, which would give us all of the attribute values that we want to filter, search, or query by through the map. And then we have a Carto account that watches that Google Drive and also just syncs daily. So why did we work with Carto? Well, our partners at the NSRC were already working with Carto at the time, that undersea cable map that you saw. They originally had a nonprofit and education license that in theory supported a direct database connection, but in the end for us, that support didn't actually pan out. So this was our workaround to continue hosting their data and using the front end they were used to, but go on this sideways journey through other cloud platforms. But it actually has been working pretty seamlessly for a couple of years, and we haven't had to do any changes to it. But I hear some of the Carto JS that we're using is getting sunset soon, and so we're going to have to do some changes on that. And then for the graph widgets, we are using HighCharts.js. So what are some of the other questions that were important to us? One of the things that they wanted to do was use a non-Mercator projection. So you may notice, well, it's a little hard to see the ocean on there. On my screen, it's a little bit more vivid, but you can tell by the shape, I think, of kind of North America and the continents that you're looking at something rounded. This is actually more of a Robinson. And this was their global partnerships. Are really worldwide, and we want to make sure they're not trivialized, the locations of people based on the issues with Web Mercator. When we first made this map, that actually wasn't an easy lift. None of the online web mapping libraries allowed projections out of the box. So now I know Esri and Mapbox and a few others do, which is awesome. But at the time, and since we've continued using this base, we used some really neat trickery from Carto that allowed you to project your data by using translations to assign false coordinates, which they would then tile on top of a Web Mercator tiles, so it looked projected. So here's an example of, on top of the edge, you can see North America in the blue on the map, and in the sort of beige over here, and this is where the US actually is. So we have, if you were to upload any data from any other like tile service, it's going to be big and square and web Mercator-y behind. And so we just only use the layers that we've already fake projected. And they're served up by the tiles by Cardo, and it's lovely. And while I think it's amazing, we do have so many more options for projecting on the fly. Now there's, you can still do this kind of trickery. Another design goal was to show both type and frequency of events at each location. So one option was graduated circles as pie charts. Pretty standard, but for their locations, there was a lot of occlusion. The circles hid the locations on the map. Additionally, we thought about maybe using marker clusters, but I wasn't a huge fan of the number of clicks you had to do to actually drill into them to see how many events happen at a location. And unlike the poster where we put all their activities into 2 categories, we wanted 4. You can see the colors on the end: workshops, assisting with infrastructure, actually hosting technical conferences. So we decided to create poker chip stacks. And what we did was aggregate all the venues' locations to their city level. And then for the number of events that happened at each city, we adjusted their Y coordinate. So we end up with these little poker chip stacks, and you can see the proportional colors as well as the order of events that happened. Another benefit of this is because each of these is still a individual record on the map, they're all interactive. So as you move your mouse up and down, you can see here I'm hovering in the middle of that particular poker chip stack, and I can see the details from the pop-up for that particular event. Back to the use case of simplifying reports. The widgets allow you to filter the map by event type and region and date. So if the team wants to create a report to send to their funder, for example, they received a grant and would like to show, in this case, filtering for only workshops that occurred in Africa between 2010 and 2015, they can just do this on this particular map, which is for exploratory for anyone else, but for them, they can do that filter, hit the little save map in the corner, and it exports out a little image for them to use with a simplified legend, and then they can just drop these into their reports. On the one hand, it feels like I was, undoing my own job. They don't need to come to us to make their maps anymore. They can do it on their own. But the great thing is that frees us up to do more creative projects instead of doing a tiny, query and exporting it for them when we've already got a set, stable way to do it. Okay. Moving to a different map, because I want to show you a big range. This is a more recent one that we've done for them with a really kind of different workflow. So the Global Research and Education Network Routing Map. So they're interested in groups that look at how do those packets of data travel around the world, and there's different research groups with different coverage around the world that participates. Some of them are regional, some of them are national, and they work in one country. At this point, this was the entry data set that they gave to us. So the routing repository is focused on internet infrastructure and aims to assist the research and education community with improving routing announcements made to the global internet and the people that allow us to have the Wi-Fi in this room and do these kind of presentations. So the map they had was an image that they had produced themselves that got the basic information across, but as I said before, they've, moving past doing their simple maps, they've started to come to us and say, what can we do? What can you do with this? Our goals are initially to improve the map design, but let's brainstorm and see what else we can do. So we decided we could add interactivity to facilitate exploration of the network as well. So there's our original, and this is the new one, and I have it shrunk down to very tiny of screen, and I'll flip over to it right now so you can see it kind of 3/4 of the way down the page. But we've used a different style that now matches the aesthetic of the other maps as well. The workflow is a little different than the interactive map, and we didn't need a fully fleshed out interactive map library. We didn't need Mapbox for this. We didn't need Cardo. We just needed clickable access. And so we just went with exporting, getting our style put in, going to AI where we exported to an SVG, and then using just a little bit of interactivity with D3. And so if I pop back over to the live version, I think this one I put here. So what we just created was if you go and hover over any of these, you can now actually see the extent. Before, the only way to know which countries were involved in a certain research network was to read the list. And so now, as map fans, you'd agree that's a little bit more powerful way to present the information. You can see which countries are involved in each network by hovering on them instead of just reading it in the list above. And we added the logos for anyone who can find them quicker if they're familiar with this particular type of network. And then clicking on them takes them to the pages of the information of the reports that they want to share. So there was the screenshot in case the internet didn't work. Similarly, we have a calendar map. So as I said, we've been working a lot with them to say, what do you have that's hidden in your database? What do they have that's hidden in tables that we can create a more engaging map interface for intrinsically spatial data? In this case, the goal for the calendar map was to do those things as well as show future events and help people plan. What else is happening around the world at the same time? If I'm going to be traveling to a different continent in a certain month and there's maybe another event that I might be able to attend at the same time, I'd like to know that in advance. So what the NSRC has right now, or previously, was a table view. And anyone involved in network research around the world submits directly to this. So this isn't all the events that they run, their activity map, that was the other one. This is anyone in the world involved in this type of work submits their events, and it shows up on their iCal feed. And that was how they had it up until we decided to make it mappy. This is what we added. So now there is on the left the table view, and on the right, the map view. Same workflow as the activity map. Originally, we were pulling it from their iCal feed, and then same thing, we decided to go directly into their database. Similar workflow as the activity map, and also similar base map. You might recognize that, right? We did that for two reasons. One is for style. You know that you're looking at an NSRC map when you see their regions and this projection, and it all colored this way. Also, it allows us to reuse widgets and work that we've previously done, so we can again focus on new things. So this map, we're similarly using points. You can filter by whether something's upcoming. So we've got 4 events, it looks like. Oh, there's 27 coming up. But if we hover on one, you can get the details. So if you were to hover there, again, I'm using screenshots to make worried about the internet, but we can see that there's information that the user had entered about this event, the date, what languages it's going to be in, an external link to their website, an email for the contact information. We can see what's happened in the past. So these are all the events that have actually happened. Again, helpful for reporting, information perspective, and also because it looks cool. And again, we then have a question that's a little trickier and became a little more of a cartography question. They allowed people to enter events in their database, especially for the future, that don't have city or venue precision for the location. They'll say, you know what, in 2029, we're going to be hosting this particular conference in this particular country. That's as much information we have. For example, we know that in 3 years, NACIS is going to be somewhere in, well, maybe Canada. Maybe not the US. Maybe we do go to the regional. Somewhere in North America, NACIS is going to be happening in a couple of years. So how did we put those events on the map? We don't want the ones only where they already know the city. We want to be able to handle all these cases. So what we decided to do was go to a choropleth map to show the region, and we did I'm not sure if you can read it from there, but a very specific little legend that says fewest to most. So it's dynamic depending on what the data is, and we're aggregating by region and country level, and that pulls in all the specific ones as well. I am going to leave it there. We have a few other projects that I could share with you, which I would love to if people are interested after, or explore the NSRC's website, but my concluding thoughts are that this work is possible due to years of developing a successful and cohesive design style that we can reuse on multiple projects. Good communication with our partners and within the office is key. I'd say our evidence of success is the continued and ongoing invitation to collaborate with them with creative freedom the more we work with them. So I would like to thank all the people in the InfoGraphics lab and the NSRC who have provided feedback, data crunching and cleaning, the students who execute all the iterations of the ideas that we come up with and then end up on the cutting room floor. So you don't see them here, they don't see them on the web, but they put in countless hours of the iterations that we go through to get to something that works well. And thanks to the NSF for funding the NSRC and our time to work with them. Thank you. And I think I left a minute for questions because I got to choose how long. Yes?
I was wondering, in a couple of examples, you showed that you were bringing your information to Google Drive and then Ricardo. Are you using like APIs or something to transfer your data to do that?
So on the NSRC end, they have written their own script that just pushes to their own account that syncs, and we did that so that they can change anything in their database, and as long as the schema remains the same, the maps still work and nothing breaks. So from their end, I'd have to confirm what exactly what they're using for that batch script, but it just syncs to Google Drive easily, and because we're using Cardo, we don't also use any scripts for that. It just, there's a button if you use Cardo that it's sync on particular files hourly, daily, weekly. I will say I didn't mention there are pros and cons to that. Pro, it works seamlessly. I don't have to worry. Someone else is in charge of making sure, right? Cardo is in charge of making sure that it actually syncs. Con, we pay them a lot. So yeah, but as I said, there was previously a nonprofit license that was covering a lot of that, but that evaporated. And so we'll see what method we use going forward. All right, thank you.
Will you be able to answer questions?
Yeah, I can definitely answer questions. Oh, I took my contact information down. I can definitely answer questions via email or Slack or Twitter or all the things. There's my handle, it's my name, Joanna Merson, or jmerson@uoregon.edu. And thank you.
Thank you.